Good morning. How wonderful it is to be together again, and what a delight to have David Rondelli back with us this morning. Thank you, David, for being here, for that wonderful beginning to our service this morning. Wow. I want to thank Jody Thompson for being our liturgist, Rich Cheatham for being our audio-visual person this morning, and of course, Holly Thompson for being the amazing deacon to the diaspora. At this point in the service, I invite all who are able to please stand and join together in the call to worship printed in the bulletin.
To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand.
To worship is to be silent, before a stir in the wind, or the passing shadow of a cloud. To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music.
To
To worship
is to sing with the singing
beauty of the earth.
It is to listen through a storm to the still, small voice within. Worship is loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain.
Worship is a kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and through acts of love. Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an inarticulate silence yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal. Let us join together in singing our opening hymn, which is one of your bulletin inserts this morning, For the Earth Forever Turning. Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us all to join together in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation. I invite you to take this time to center your hearts, your minds, your bodies, your spirits into this here and now that we are creating for one another. After a few minutes of silent meditation has gone by, we'll have a musical meditation to bring us back into the flow of our liturgy. Let us join together now in silent meditation. Our reading this morning is one of the lectionary texts for this Sunday. It's from the book of Job. The book of Job is a unique book in the Bible. The author is unknown. It is a story, there really are two sections. There's the framing, the story that frames the book of Job, which is the first chapter or two and the last chapter. And then there's everything in between, which is about 38 chapters. And we don't know who the author is of either of these two parts. We think that the framing story is a rather ancient folktale, actually. The story is about a person who has lived a good life and been a good person, kind and generous. This person's name is Job. And then a disaster happens. He loses everything. All because of this tragic wager between God and, quote unquote, the accuser to test Job and to see if, his life has been pretty good up to now, to see if everything changes and, he's down on his luck, if he will turn and curse God. So that's the frame for everything that happens, everything that's said in the 38 chapters that are really the core of the book of Job. And it's a series of conversations that Job has with two of his very so pious friends, giving him advice. And of course, we all know what's the last thing someone needs in tragic hardship is advice. Eventually, at the end, another voice speaks, and it's the voice of God speaking out of the whirlwind. But God never really answers the questions that Job poses. But Job is restored to good health and to prosperity. And the portion we're going to hear today is one of Job's speeches to his friends. And this is roughly halfway through the book. I've adapted the translation to make it more inclusive. So in the original, all of the pronouns for God are masculine. But what you're going to hear is alternating masculine and feminine pronouns for the divine. In this excerpt, we hear Job's defiance and Job's despair. As a generalization, Job's speeches throughout the book of Job are poignant, poetic, and brutally honest. Unfortunately, most of the translations fail to capture the power of the poetry. And I think this translation by Robert Alter comes the closest. So let's take a listen to this selection from the book of Job.
This is Robert Alter's translation of Job 23, verses 1 through 9, and 16 and 17. And Job spoke up and said, "Even now my complaint is defiant. God's hand lies heavy as I groan. Would that I knew how to find Adonai, that I might come to where she dwells. I would lay out my case before him and would fill my mouth with contentions. I would know the words that she answered me and would grasp what he said to me. With great power would she debate me? No, he alone would pay heed to me. There the upright can contend with her. I would get away for all time from my judge. Look, to the east I go, and he is not there. To the west, and I do not discern her. And God has made my heart quail. Shaddai has dismayed me. For I am not severed from darkness, and my face the gloom has covered. Here ends the reading.
Let us join together in singing the hymn, Spirit, I Have Heard You Calling, one of the inserts in your bulletin. Spirit, So this morning, I want to just begin a discussion. I don't know how much time we'll actually have to all talk today, but I felt it was important to give you some information before we begin our discussion. And this discussion is all about worship. What is worship? Why do we do what we do on Sunday mornings? Now, in Christian worship, there has been a lot of change over the years. Some changes in style, some changes in content, certainly changes in theology, and in our worldview, the way we understand the world. Nothing like the way they did 2,000 years ago. And I want to begin by giving a nod to our Jewish foundation. And that is in the idea, the theology of Sabbath. One rabbi said that the seventh day is holy because that was the day in creation when God rested and breathed a new soul into the world. And that soul was Sabbath, renewal, rest. There's a wonderful book about Sabbath written by Wayne Muller titled Sabbath, finding rest, renewal, and delight in our busy lives. Muller writes, like a path through the forest, Sabbath creates a marker for ourselves, so if we are lost, we can find our way back to our center. Remember the Sabbath means remember that everything you have received is a blessing. Remember to delight in your life, in the fruits of your labor. Remember to stop and offer thanks for the wonder of it. End quote. I love that image of Sabbath as a path through the forest and marking the trail that helps us find our way back to our center. One might say our essence. Our worship service begins with the lighting of the candles, something that maybe happens when the few of you that are early show up and we light the candles, but for most folks, when they get there, the candles are already lit. That is a symbolic act. First, it symbolizes that we, as we gather together to be a spiritual community, are bringing our light into this time and place. Lighting the candles is an act of prayer, asking that we may be among those who bring light into the world. The next thing that happens in our service is prelude. We listen to a piece of music. This is a time that is inviting us into a different way of being, of listening to something that is beyond words. Whatever the style of music or the feeling of it, it invites us to center into something real and felt and non-verbal. I think that's important preparation. Immediately after that, you have a brief welcome from yours truly or whoever's leading the service, and then what we call the call to worship. And this morning I chose a call to worship by a Unitarian Universalist minister who passed away, I believe, in the 1980s, named Jacob Trapp. He's written some wonderful sermons and poems and liturgies, and I particularly like this call to worship because there is nothing in this call to worship that we did this morning that is about stroking the ego of some divine being out there. Instead, it's about standing in awe. He references many times the beauty, the glory, the wonder of nature. It's about being silent, receptive. It is about singing. It is about a kindred fire within all of our hearts. I invite you to, reread that at your leisure, because he says a lot about worship without falling back on platitudes. Worship, or I should say, the call to worship, is about being mindful of what our intention is. It is also, in my mind, about gratitude. I can't imagine beginning a time of communal prayer and worship without starting with gratitude. The call to worship is about awakening to the opportunities of this particular spiritual hour that we share together. And this feeling and recognition of connection between us all, and between us and the natural world, and between us and this mystery we call God. It's all about connections. In addition to Jacob Trapp's example of what worship is about and the call to worship, there is one poem that I consider to be the epitome of a call to worship. I would just be delighted, no end, to start every service with this poem. It's a poem called Eagle Poem by Joy Harjo. How many people are familiar with that? A couple. Okay, I don't see many hands going up. Here's Eagle Poem by Joy Harjo. Consider, if you will, as you hear this poem, how it functions as a call to worship, to enter into this spiritually aware, awake space. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this. And breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion. Like eagle, rounding out the morning inside us. We pray it will be done in beauty, in beauty. The next thing in our service is a hymn. It's the opening hymn, the first song that all of us sing together. Usually it is some variation on a theme of gratitude. Usually it has an element of joy, although not always. Sometimes it might be a little more reflective. But it is an act that we do of singing together. And one of the reasons why we stand is because, and we don't stand for all of our hymns, but for the first and the last verse hymn we do. One of the reasons we stand is because singing involves our whole bodies. Any singer will tell you that it is more difficult to sing well sitting down than it is to sing standing up. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with sitting down if there are physical limitations or you're not unable to stand up. But that is why, in my opinion, we stand, because worship is involving our whole bodies, not just a few brain cells. Then we enter one of my favorite times of the service, and that is a time for silence. As I always begin this time to refer to it as a time of centering heart, mind, body, spirit, it is a time to slow down. It is a time to listen. It is a time to breathe. It is a time to just be present. It is a time to just be here now. And all of this that's happened up to this point is really preparation for worship. Because entering into a sacred time and space of worship is not like flipping a switch. It just doesn't turn on and off with a little flick of the finger. It takes time to move into this deep place of openness, awareness, of feeling, of connectedness, of listening. And then what happens next? There is a reading. Usually it's a biblical reading, part of our spiritual tradition and wisdom. And the Bible, whatever the reading is, in my opinion, is always an invitation for us to join in a conversation. Oftentimes, the Bible itself is a record of a conversation that people had thousands of years ago, and an invitation for us to take up the conversation and add our own thoughts and perspectives. One of the explicitly Christian terms for Bible reading, for one of the lectionary Bible readings every Sunday, is the gospel. And we think of gospel as something, special and sacred and above all other readings. It's not. It simply means good news. That's what it is, good news. So whenever we're listening to, hearing a gospel reading, we're being asked, as we hear it, what is the good news here? Today, as we heard the reading from Job, which I'm not going to really deal with in my sermon today, what is the good news there? Perhaps it's that Job has found the gumption in the midst of his tragedy to be defiant. It seems that at the end of the book of Job, he's rewarded for being honest with God, for actually indicting God in this tragedy that has happened. We're also asked during this time of reflection, what is the good news in our world today? Sometimes it's hard to see, especially right now with all the violence in the world. After this time of reflection and learning, sometimes discussion, unfortunately all too often listening, we have a hymn of community that in some way reflects on the reading. And then we get to the message, which is bringing the reading, the ancient conversation, into a conversation for today. I had one seminary professor say that every Sunday when you walk up to the pulpit, you should bring your Bible and your newspaper with you. Because we're always bringing our tradition and our contemporary here and now world into this search for meaning. After the message, we get a call for sharing, grounded in gratitude we are given an opportunity to support this spiritual community. That is followed by a piece of music we call the offertory. And that's not just music, incidental music, while we're passing the plate. It is an intentional musical, artistic offering beyond words. And I invite us to think more about how music is offering us an invitation to go within ourselves to that place that is without words. And then we join together in a doxology expressing our gratitude in song. And whether there are explicit words of praise, there's always this feeling of gratitude and thanksgiving and of blessing. Gratitude, thanksgiving, blessing. That's the heart of praise. And then together we bless our gifts, reminding us that everything we give is an intentional offering of ourselves and our resources. And it is the act of noticing the gift and the blessing that is all around us. And the gift and the blessing it is that we have something to share with others. And then we enter a time for the prayers of the community, when we are each given an opportunity to share our joys and our concerns with one another. We are each given an opportunity to hear from one another the joys and the concerns of others. And then in our prayer time, together, in silence, it is an invitation to trust that someone, something, hears all of this with compassion and gratitude and presence. And whether or not we believe in a literal supernatural being that is the divine, or whether we think of the divine as a fundamental way of being, or of the ground of being itself, or a force like gravity that keeps us rooted, we have trust in vocalizing and verbalizing our joys and concerns, that even the hardest times in our lives, we can let people know what's going on. And when we have no control over what is happening in our lives, we can let it go. And then we conclude with one of the most traditional parts of our service, a prayer of Jesus, which, for those of you who are familiar with our services, we have changed into a very non-traditional, paraphrased version of the prayer of Jesus. And then the obligatory announcements and a closing hymn, which I always try and pick a closing hymn that is action-oriented, so that it functions like a commissioning. You'll hear that in the last hymn that we sing today. It's about what we are called to do. Sometimes it's just about peace and shalom, which is also a nice way to close. And then the benediction that whoever is leading the service gives, which is a blessing over the community. Themes here are usually peace, shalom, which is translated, that's the Hebrew word, which we translate as peace, but it also means well-being. It also means justice. It also means equality and equity. Themes of joy, of hope, of connection and trust often show up in the benediction. Our ability to open to one another, to go out into the world with an open heart, open mind, open spirit, and strength for the journey of transformation we are all on. And then our service closes with a piece of music. Usually, it is a piece that has an element of joy to it, an element of activity, a little upbeat, to send us out ready to greet the world after a time of deep thought and reflection. In a nutshell, in the course of a worship service, I hope that we will have brought our whole self into this time and place of meeting. I hope that we will have opened our senses to that which is beyond our whole self. I hope we will have listened to many voices and differing perspectives, various traditions, sources ancient and sources new. Listen to one another's joys and concerns, been opened by artistic expressions like music, poetry, stained glass, sculpture, and had an encounter, a deep meeting with a self that maybe we don't always take the time to get in touch with, a deep meeting with others, with the world, and with the mystery of the divine. So that is my way of saying, let's begin a conversation about worship. I've always been interested in changing things up, doing things new. But I found out early in pastoral ministry that a minister rarely has time to do that. It's about all we can do to get the usual format into a meaningful experience. So I'm wondering about shaking things up. Maybe doing more often, I haven't done this for a while, meditation service where it is very meditative the whole time. There's no sermon, just poetry and music and silence, and a couple other parts of the service. Maybe there are ideas you have. You see, one of the challenges of being a minister is you rarely have time to go see what other folks are doing. I've had the pleasure of being the pianist for the local Jewish synagogue in Salinas for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's opened me up to new ways of doing worship. But other than that, I'm open to all of our ideas. And if you're feeling particularly inspired, let me know that you'd like to develop and lead a worship service. As you know, I am open to that, always. At this point, I want to invite Dan Riley to come forward and give us a brief moment for stewardship. Our stewardship pledge is beginning, and you'll be getting a letter this week about that. Dan?
Good morning. Most of us don't need to be reminded of what stewardship is, but I did a little research. First, I asked my four-legged friends what they thought stewardship is. I talked to my animals, and I imagine they talked to me back. First, I asked Robbie about stewardship, my older border collie, and he said it's like when I help you put the horses in so that they can be fed their dinner in the evening. Margaret, my younger border collie, says it's like when I chase the squirrels into their holes for the night so that they are not out in the wild. My horses thought it was when I turn them out so that they can eat the green grass and clear the area. So then I Googled it. And Google defines stewardship as the job of supervising or taking care of something, such as an organization or property. They offer as an example responsible stewardship of our public land. From there I went to a plethora of definitions of stewardship. But I found a sentence that I think sums it up, the meaning of stewardship from a religious standpoint. And I quote, "In Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions, stewardship refers to the way time, talents, material possessions, or wealth are used or given for the service of God." I would like to add a new dimension to stewardship, and that is spread the word. Spread the word about the wonderful church and beautiful sanctuary we have. Spread the word about the message we receive on Sunday mornings. Spread the word about the great music that we have. And spread the word about our meaningful fellowship. So, my message about stewardship is spread the word. Thank you.
And now let us give of our treasure what we are able, with generous hearts, in gratitude for the amazing opportunity we have in this chapel to experience the deep meaning of life. Let us join together in the blessing of these gifts. O God, through the offering of these gifts, may we become a more open people, open-minded in hearing your word and wisdom, open-hearted in healing a broken world, open-handed in heeding your call for charity and enacted love. With thanks for all good gifts, we present a portion of our substance and the whole of ourselves.
Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us all into a time for sharing our joys and our concerns with the community. If there's anything you'd like to share, please get my attention. I'll bring the microphone to you. And if there's any way in which we might respond to your sharing in solidarity, end with a phrase we can repeat, like, thanks be to God, God hear our prayers, or blessed be, or whatever. Is there anything folks have to share this morning? Elizabeth, good to see you.
Thank you. Okay, I have three, so bear with me. Bud is back home and has been home now for 12 days, and we're settling into a routine, and we have caregivers who come help out. So that's all good news. Second of all, our neighbor, Bob Shue, who sits in the pew up there usually, is in CHOMP and ICU and not doing well. His son and his ex-wife are, and his girlfriend from up north are all here possibly saying goodbye, but he is fighting. And so prayers for Bob for his recovery if possible. It's not looking good. And third of all, for my good friend, Thea Sagan, who passed away this past week. Some of you may remember Thea. She fought a 27-year battle with cancer, and at the end, the doctor said they could keep her alive, but she was just so tired. She wanted to go out on her terms, and so she opted to stop treatments and go to hospice and get hospice care. And she passed peacefully with her family around her. Just a little background, Thea was instrumental in getting the labyrinth at our church. Back in like 1997, she donated $25 that was designated for building the labyrinth, and it was just seed money, right, to inspire other people to give and to contribute. And together, she and I headed up that committee and built the labyrinth. So I have a long history with Thea, and she was a very dear friend, and just sad that it ended, but blessings on Thea and the family. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep Bob in our thoughts and our prayers, and for friends and family of Thea Sagan who are saying goodbye and feeling the loss. God, hear our prayers. And for the life of Thea Sagan, let us say, thanks be to God. Harriet.
Refreshments today is not for me.
Oh.
I don't.
Up to the next 2 weeks, your next week, our next week, and you're the following. Right. And then nobody else has signed up, so we don't know.
Okay. Everybody, I don't need that, I've got this. Let's just take a deep breath of air. That's refreshing, isn't it? There's our refreshments for today. Judy.
I think I just need to say something special about our good friend Christy Clark, who is healing, not even a month yet, from breaking her hip, and visited with her last night. She has good color. She looks like she's going to recover fully, but it's going to be a long haul. So just keep her in your thoughts, because she's very frustrated that she's pretty much tied to her walker right now. And, you know, thanks be to God that she's here with us and that she's going to make a recovery.
Yes. For Christy's amazing recuperative powers. Thanks be to God.
Edie and I are going up to Stanford tomorrow, or no, this afternoon, and for some diagnostic tests. And we'll know more later on. That's all I have to report right now. Thank you for asking, though.
Yes, for Edie, for her doctors and the tests and the diagnosis that will come from it, and her eventual recovery. Thanks be to God. If there's nothing else that folks want to share at this point, I invite us into a few moments of silent prayer. After a little bit of time has gone by, I invite you to join together in saying this new paraphrased version of the prayer of Jesus that's printed in the bulletin. Let us join together now in silent prayer. Great Spirit, ever dwelling within our hearts, Spirit within the heart of this community, within the heart of the world and beyond. We give you thanks for your presence with us in our challenges, our struggles, our losses, in our joys, delights, and successes. May we, who have found within this Spirit healing and hope and vitality, also bring healing, hope, and vitality to others and to our world. Hear us now as we say this new version of that ancient prayer that our brother Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Everlasting Abba, Ima, whose name is holy. When our aims kiss, communion exists in this living world, here and now. Provide us today with enough food, clothing, and shelter for tomorrow. And as we forgive the debts of others, we believe our debts are forgiven. To prevent despair, harmonize good and evil, for in faith, hope, and love are we called forward into a beautiful commonwealth of justice, freedom, and peace forever. Amen. Now's the time in our service for any announcements that folks have to make. I have just two. One is that I'm going to be on vacation this week, and we'll be back on October, I think it's the 22nd, the Tuesday. Yes, that's when I'm back. And Lamont will be leading the service next week, and we've got a guest vocal quartet.
Yep, Jeffrey Thompson and all are coming.
Yes.
And they're singing Sweet Little Victoria and Amazing Grace and Jesus Remember Me. And among others.
Right. Just a few highlights. Yes. So I hope you'll join us a week from today. I also want to invite folks to a concert tonight at Hidden Valley Music Seminars at 3 o'clock. The Monterey County Composers Forum has hired an amazing professional string quartet from the Bay Area called Friction Quartet. And they're playing all new world premieres of string quartets this afternoon. So I hope you'll join us for that. The admission is $20, which is quite a deal nowadays for a musical concert. And it's at 3 o'clock. So I hope to see many of you there. If there are no further announcements, I invite all who are able to please stand and join in singing our closing hymn, which is number 428 in the hymnal. And I invite us all to sing the first 3 verses. with that great big spirit and heart of love within you, to share, to care, and to help heal one another and our world. Go forth this day in peace. Amen.